Hey, worship teams, welcome. We're glad that you're here. Worship Team Training Hangout Podcast, and we have a fantastic show for you. We've been off for about a week or two, probably a little bit longer. We had some things we had to deal with as far as the last show. It didn't come across too well. So just because you are here today, we're going to recap real quick on the last show that we tried to get out, and we had some camera failure, but now we got it fixed, and we're back. We're rocking. We're ready to go. We're going to be talking about part one of why you might not be qualified for your job and what you can do about it, and then also doing secular music and worship. So first I want to say welcome and thank you to Stephanie Kelly. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's great to see you again. How you been?
I'm doing well. It's great to be back. I've missed you guys.
Yeah, we missed you too. I don't know about Tony, but I missed you.
I was missed.
Yes. Glad to know. But good, Stephanie. So great to see you today. Timmons, how are you, baby? Great to see you.
I'm good. Great to see you. I'm just trying to figure out what's in the back of Tony's on his wall.
Oh, that.
The picture, yes.
Oh.
I'm selling these posters now.
Wow.
I thought
Very good.
maybe I'd just show you how good they look up on the wall.
Hey, Tony, did you draw that or did your kids?
That's a photograph.
That's funny.
Oh, okay.
All right,
I'm doing great. I'm doing great.
That's good. I was just going to ask the Steeler of the show, Tony, how are you doing today? Great to see you.
I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing well.
He's a little preoccupied with something.
I'm trying to get my Facebook invite up to everybody, and I'm having problems. Okay, it's up now.
Can you tag me because I'm having problems too.
I will tag all of you in, and just to make sure that everybody is watching, so no need.
You got 99 problems, and the internet's all of them.
And he tagged me. Wow, I actually got a tagging from Tony. That's amazing. All right, guys, let's go.
I just thought of a song though.
What's that?
And that is?
So, he tagged me. Oh, he tagged me. And oh, I forget the rest of it. Well,
No,
you know, we
keep
can
going.
around there.
Keep going.
That's okay.
I am a friend on Facebook.
I'm not.
This is a perfect segue to why our worship leader's not qualified. You know what I mean?
I'm not sure if this is the reason why they even tuned in today, but that you now have tuned in and we got your attention. Let's go ahead and jump to our first topic. We're going to, the last 4 weeks, we talked about avoiding burnout, and everybody had a lot of great words to share as far as spiritual issues. It's not just logistical, but it's the matter of the heart. Well, there's a lot of other things that are the matter of the heart, and also, yes, the matter with the logistics, and that means with our jobs, and being worship leaders, being lay leaders, and we struck this question, actually, I think it was Tony's idea, about, and I want to put the blame on you, Tony, because you're good at that, but why you might not be qualified for your job and what you can do about it. So, Tony, how about you open us up? Can you tell us why aren't worship leaders qualified for their jobs?
Well, to begin with, I just mentioned something along those lines. It was actually Stephanie's idea, so if this is a huge hit, she gets all the credit.
Really?
But in a nutshell, my concept on that is that, you know, I used to be in a position where I was sort of on the hiring side of worship leaders, and I just noticed that the trend was most people in the church who are in that position tend to look for one main ingredient, and that's their talent to be up on stage. As the parade of worship leaders to be interviewed for the job come through, you get them up on the platform, you watch them do their thing, and for most people outside of the actual music ministry industry, I guess, you know, like take your pastor with no real musical experience, or the church board, or whoever it is that's doing the hiring, they don't know necessarily what really is involved with the day-to-day job. So all they know to do is look at, who do I like on stage? You know, who can sing great, lead the crowd great, and what they're looking for essentially is Bono. Like, who's going to be our Bono, our rock star band leader? And then I can almost promise you the first thing they look for is that. Then they get to the spiritual qualifications, but they probably don't go down that how spiritually qualified are you road with somebody they don't like on the platform. So that platform becomes the #1 job requirement. But the truth is, when you get into the job, what you do on the platform is, and I'm not the worship leader guy, so Timmons and Branon and Stephanie, you guys would all have to answer. I'm thinking that what you do on the platform is maybe 5% of your actual job. And so you've got to look at, you know, that's like Timmons said, it's like, what, 20 minutes or 40 minutes on Sunday, that's your job. That's what you get hired for. But it's the rest of the week that that most worship leaders are unqualified for. The truth is, it doesn't take too long to be around a bunch of worship leaders and find out how few of them have any like actual training in music theory or music administration or team building and all these other things. You know, I mean, a lot of guys, and no qualms on this, but a lot of guys learned to play guitar in their rooms in a garage band and got really good at that and at leading a band, and then got into the church, and all these other job requirements are there that they have no concept about. So, I mean, the list is long. #1 at the top for me is administration, because that, if you're not a good administrator in your job, you're going to burn out and you're going to burn your team out. And that administration is everything from scheduling people, scheduling rehearsals, leading a rehearsal, keeping a music library, organizing set lists. I mean, the minutia that goes along with just the administration of your job. I'm going to say I have no hesitation in saying 90% of the people listening to this have little to no experience or training. Not the experience, it's the training in how to do that stuff. And so the idea of a worship leader not being qualified just has to do with what really is that job. What's that 95% that they haven't been trained for? You see it come up when there's personnel problems and they don't know how to handle them correctly. You see it come up when they have to handle a budget. I mean, it's all these things. So that's the overall concept of that.
So Timmons, thanks for that, Tony. Timmons, then you seem like a true man of disorganization. So what's your take on that? As far as, you know, him saying it's like a 5%, 10% job of worship leading, how can worship leaders better their skills in other areas that may benefit their ministry?
I was going to ask Tony that, to be real honest.
Well, the camera's on you, bud. So come on.
I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of that guy in a sense. I'm the guy that Tony's describing, and I think, honestly, to put me in some of those positions would be kind of a scary thing. To put me in a position where I'm leading a staff of people. Not the leading part. I can do that really well. It's just the it's the organization and making all the stuff that goes on during the whole week. That stuff is not my gifting yet. I would say that if you are out there, because you are out there, there are so many people like me out there. I guess the question is, what can you do about it? And some of it is like, are there people that you can find that can do some of those things, or at least help you and give you like a frame to do those things? And are there resources, you guys out there, that you know of that are helpful? I mean, Planning Center Online is super helpful if you kind of just take an hour and put your people in there, and then you know every week have like an hour when you just schedule that. That helped me. It's just like saying I'm taking this amount of time per week, and then it's like done for a month, and it feels great.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I'm that guy that you're talking about for sure.
Well, that's good. So Stephanie, you may be the gal that we're talking about. I don't think so. I think you have some things to say. What can worship leaders do about all this?
Well, the biggest thing I think is really know your skill set, know your calling, and before you accept the position, make sure that you're in alignment with what they're asking you to do and what you can do. I mean, it would be better to wait, I think, or to ease in slowly with some sort of a mentorship, and most worship pastors are going to be willing to mentor you, but I would say just wait a little longer, or have someone really guide you through the process. The other part that I found is most of my work, because I've done this now for full-time for 17 plus years, is the shepherding part. It is the pastoral part. So,
yeah.
I mean, I think if you know your word, that is really, really crucial to being able to do this job. Literally, my first week out of college at my first worship full-time staff job, my creative director boss said to me, okay, here's what's going on in your ministry. And it was a mega church, and it had a choir and all this stuff. And he said, so 2 people in your choir are having an issue. And I was like, okay, what's the issue? Well, one person is having an affair with the other person's husband. 2 ladies in your choir, and you just need to deal with it. And I was like 22 years old.
Wow.
And it was crazy. And so, I mean, I'm thankful that I had a grounding in God's Word, and that I did have that layer above me where the creative director did help me go through that, but that was a real life scenario. And 95% of the time, that's the kind of stuff that you're dealing with. You're dealing with people that need love, they need care. You are their pastor, and you need to get equipped in that quickly and have really solid grounding in your faith to be able to handle some of those things. So between that and the exhaustive administrative stuff, and then also dealing with staff that don't understand you, that's probably another big one. I think we have to constantly be self-awaring ourselves.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah.
Self-awaring ourselves. But we have to constantly just be in check and praying for discernment. And hey, is there someone that I need to go explain what I'm doing to, simply because they don't get it, and they could be causing division unknowingly by not understanding that half your time really is in the sanctuary, taping the charts, whatever it is. Nowadays we use our iPads, which is awesome to put the charts on, but understanding of who you are and what you're doing with your other staff, I think, is huge, because if you don't win them over, you're going to be this island that they don't understand.
Yeah, that's true. And that's a great word, Stephanie and Timmons, and the best word on that is, we have to shepherd. I love that word that you use, because it does have everything to do with people that we lead in our ministries, and the better that we can help prepare them for spiritual things and leadership things, the better that will enhance the worship. Because, Tony, as you said, I mean, a lot of us are just not that administratively apt and oriented for our job. I'm a little bit different from that, but I know that the better that I can prepare my assistant, my worship staff, then that's going to reflect on rehearsals, is going to reflect on future planning. But the other thing that it reflects on is the relationship with my pastor. If I come across disorganized, or I feel maybe that I'm personalizing issues or conversations, that's only going to destroy the ministry, or it's going to eat away at me personally. So I love what you said also, Stephanie, as far as being the self-aware, or however you said it. But I think that if we are self-aware within how we present ourselves to one another, working together as a team, then the focus is off of ourselves, and it's really on the objective point, or the Lord Himself, and we're able to accomplish more ministry-wise because we're not self-turning inward, if that makes any sense.
Right.
Now,
self-turning inward. Got it.
Self-turning inward. That's it. That's another Steffi word there. We're just going to call them Steffiisms, Steffi words.
Just so you know, I liked the idea of going to, finding another worship pastor in town that's kind of been doing it for a while. I think that's great. That's a great call. I mean, number one, it just probably helps unity in the church.
Well, I want to hit on one thing Timmons said, which is a good example. I mean, he said, you just sit down for an hour with Planning Center, you can take care of a whole month. I would challenge you that if you're having fun in your job all the time, you're doing your job wrong. You need to have time carved out in your week or every single day where you're doing hardcore work. And if all these things that we're talking about are an issue to you, that's what you need to be working on.
Right.
You need to take an hour a day maybe and learn how to learn about administration. Take time to read a book on administration, or all the things that you're bad at. You need to be doing training on. If you don't know how to direct a choir and you're in charge of a choir, you better go and start studying with somebody who knows how to direct a choir. And even if it's 5 hours of lessons over 2 months, that's better than where you're at now. So there's a lot of things, and this isn't a short-term problem. You can't, if you're already in the job and you're, as we say, unqualified. I'm not telling you to walk away from your job, but you're also not going to fix it by next week. You've got to look at this as a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year plan where you're going to get your act together, and you've got to start identifying all these issues. If you don't know how to manage money well, and you're in charge of a budget for a church, and these are people's tithes, what are you doing not going and learning how to do some basic accounting stuff, or surrounding yourself with people who are trustworthy accountants? If you've got a choir, I bet you there's somebody on your choir who can, join your volunteer team and help you with some of those issues.
Totally.
And your pastor needs to know about all this. Your pastor needs to know, look, I've identified these areas where I'm struggling, and I don't want to burn out, and I don't want to burn my people out. So these are the areas I need training in. And your pastor may have a lot of pastors are way into all the leadership, administration kind of books. They may have great resources for you to check out. Go to your pastor and tell him, I have to improve in these areas, and I need to be held accountable to them. The way I do my ministry right now needs to be different than the way I'm doing it a year from now, and I need to be held accountable to that. So don't just listen to this and say, oh yeah, that's me. Go out and do something about it, or you shouldn't be in that job.
Wow.
Right, and for all further complaints and comments, Tony's cell phone number is 949. Okay, just kidding. All right, so let's move on.
Okay.
Well, you got to make like 5 seconds. Go.
Okay, so I was that person that really was not the greatest conductor, and I went to a conducting seminar at that first church again, and it totally helped my confidence, you know. And so it was so good to do that kind of thing. And somebody did call me out, and they're like, "You're not very good with a choir. Like, you're not very good conducting." And that was my worst class in college. And and it gains credibility with your team and with your pastor when you are open to that kind of feedback.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Stephanie. Now, talking about feedback and talking about sets and what we do within worship, how does secular music fit into what we do within worship? Some churches dislike the use of secular music. Other churches embrace it. They see it in different forms and different ways. So the number one question we want to ask for this guy right here, Tony, who is the expert on all secular in music and worship, is it biblical to use secular music in worship? Tony, what's your thought on that?
Well, if you go to the Psalms, some of the Psalms actually start off with a little instruction where it says, sung to the tune of For the Lilies, or something like that. And I always wonder what that song is. It's basically saying use what I believe to be a secular melody to sing these lyrics. And I've long been curious about that. There's not a whole lot of exposition on it, but that's very interesting to me that at that point they might be using a common melody that people knew and then applying these new lyrics to it. It's just sort of food for thought. I don't know that that's,
well, we got Martin Luther. Martin Luther did that all the time.
Well, there's been controversy about that. I believe that that's true, but there's been enough controversy where I don't feel we need to even bring up that point. The fact is, I think what matters is what the heart is behind it. There's a pastor I know of, Rick Warren or something like that. I don't know. He's a local guy.
Never heard of him.
And he says something that's always stuck with me. That is, there is no Christian music. There's only Christian lyrics.
Oh yeah.
And that makes sense to me. Right. As a musician who's made a lot of my career in instrumental music,
love that.
It makes a lot of sense to me. I write something that's very much from a place of my faith, but has no lyrics, and I believe it's exactly, what I intended to be. But not everybody's going to listen to it that way. And it really comes down to the lyrics, the intent of the use, what the heart is behind it. I think that's what matters. To me, I have no problem with secular music in the church if it's pushing the message, if it's in line with Scripture. It doesn't have to have all these Christianese words in it in order for us to accepted in the church. And you know, there's a lot of great secular songs that tell a great story.
Right.
And Jesus used parables. You know, I mean, that's what so many songs are. They're just parables. They're stories. So I have no problem with it myself. The other part of that is I just want to use the opportunity to say, if you're going to use secular music in the church, do not change the lyrics like you.
Yeah.
Like so many people do. Do not take the songs and replace words with ones that fit your message, because it's illegal. It doesn't matter that, I mean, if the song doesn't work as is, don't use it out of not only respect for the writer, because that writer may not want those lyrics changed any more than you would want your worship song changed to sing about a car or something worse.
So we can't change the music and lyrics to Jesus Makes Me Happy?
Yeah, no. And
that's funny.
So leave the songs alone if you're going to use them. Respect the writers and really respect the law. It's illegal to do that without permission, and the church needs to be conscious of that. And that the church breaks the law in copyright areas more than any other entity I know.
Susan Fontaine Godwin would be so proud to hear you say this. She may be watching right now. So Susan, kudos to you. CopyrightSolver.com. You guys need to check that out. It's a great website. Tim, what do you think about all this stuff? As far as, you know, how can God use this? How can God use secular music in the church?
Well, I don't know. He just does. I mean, if you ask me what I listen to, the majority of what I listen to is that.
Yeah.
And I've actually, a lot of my growing up, I listened to the honesty of these people asking questions and asking great questions that I wasn't allowed to ask, you know, in a sense. And I was changed. I just had a huge conversation with a friend the other day about all the stuff that we listened to growing up and the secular stuff, and it's beautiful. I mean,
yeah.
In the grand scheme of the kingdom, this question is on the edge of irrelevant. But in our institutional world, this question is like a game changer, and that's
right.
Yeah.
That's just a leadership issue and a religious issue. So I'm not a great person to talk about this.
Well, okay then, fine. Well, point well taken. Stephanie.
Glad to have you.
Yeah. What's your thought on all this, Steph?
My thought is that it is not popular right now, although it is becoming more accepted in church, and I think that's silly that it's not popular, because like Tim also said, my worship experiences when I'm driving and when I'm by myself are usually to secular music, if I'm going to be really honest, because a lot of the Christian music that is out there right now, musically for me, is distracting and it's not fulfilling to my soul, and I need both pieces.
Right.
I need beautiful music and I need lyrics that are meaningful. And so one of the things that I worship to is, like, I'll worship to Shania Twain's Keeping You Forever and For Always. And I sing that in my heart to the Lord, and
She just said that word?
I did.
Wow. You could have said Celine Dion or something, but you had to go there and say Shania.
Hey, I love Shania.
But, you know, songs like that, where the words are, I'm keeping you forever and for always. Of course, I can't remember any more right now, but it ministers to me. Classical music ministers to me. And let me do say though that the modern worship, some of it, now if I really need to go into spiritual warfare, I need to be hearing songs about Jesus, about that name, about that he heals, that the demons tremble. And so there is a purpose to me for the Christian, very overtly Christian music, and I go to it at times too. But as far as like the secular stuff, I mean, I think it is kind of lame that we have to talk about this and that it's been looked down upon. But whatever, God knows the heart, and I think if we're going to do it in church, which I think that we should if it makes sense, I agree with Tony. Just keep it authentic. The world hates fake, and especially the younger generation does not resonate with disauthentic and cheese, because it's pretty cheesy, I think.
Yeah.
To change lyrics, and then keep it excellent. Like, if someone's gonna go hear, you know, their favorite band play their song, Jesus Take the Wheel, Carrie Underwood, perfect example. Like, if you're gonna do it in church, just do it really well. Don't Christianize it. Just, like, do it well.
Yeah. Final thoughts on that, Tim?
I mean, so much of this is just up to leadership. Leadership of what they're going for. There's a great community in town that every morning they start out with a whatever. I don't even know the right term for it, but you know, a song that is not for the church necessarily. And people in town are like, man, they play secular music every Sunday. They play it. You know, that's how they start out their service, and they do it really well. I mean, it sounds awesome and it kind of rocks. Yeah. And their leadership is going after a different community. I mean, they're not going for the Christian people. They're really going for the people outside, and that's just the way that they see it as right. So I don't know. Well, it seems to work. They've got some really great people, and if that's what Jesus has invited that pastor, that leader to do, then awesome.
Well, Timmons, both you and Stephanie do a fantastic job in interweaving that within your own music. You can hear a lot of the secular influences within your own writing, and it's refreshing. It doesn't sound canned. The same way with Tony and his production of music too. I mean, you guys take music very, very seriously, and I love that. So the last question then, Tony, just leave it to you. What's the best way that bands can incorporate? We talked a lot about this, but can you shed some more light on this, on how they can incorporate either influential music, secular, or other tunes within their services?
Let me piggyback off one thing that Timmons said, which is about the culture that these great songwriters asking questions he wasn't allowed to ask. I used to work with a pastor who insisted on finding secular songs, he said, because the people who write and listen to that music are the ones we want to get into the church. Those are, I'm not every Sunday trying to reach the Christians who are already singing How Great Thou Art, as much as I'm trying to reach the community out there, and those songs represent what they're thinking. And I think that that was really powerful to me. I think Timmons kind of hit on that. As far as how to do it, I like what Stephanie said, be excellent at it. You know, if people want to hear cover tunes, I can almost promise you they can go to the bar down the street and hear a better band than they'll hear on Sunday morning.
Right.
So that's up to us how hard we can push to make our bands and our singers sound like quality. And I think that's a whole other topic for me, but it's really important to me that you present quality, and because we are competing with the world in that way, and we're losing. As far as how to incorporate it, Rick Founds, who wrote Lord, I Lift Your Name on High, we were talking once, and he was telling me about how, and he's much smarter than I am, but how the little connectors in your brain, how they use music to sort of reconnect those. Like with people who suffer memory loss, the first thing they'll do is play music from their youth, and it starts to reconnect these little, plugs in their brain. And and he said in his own band, he's got guys that are all, of the 60s, 70s generation in his band. He said the minute they're doing a, let's say, I don't know, Let It Rise, and they start throwing in little riffs from an old Crosby, Stills and Nash tune or something, he says instantly he can tell when the congregation sort of connects to this. They may not even realize what's going on musically, but there's something that connects that. So there's a value to that as well, and that's certainly one way when you talk about influences. Here's another thing. I'm sorry to keep going on here, but I love the jam session time before a rehearsal time or during sound check when the musicians are just plugging in and they start playing a little bit, because to me that's when you can start to identify your musician's influences. Right. When the bass player plugs in and the first thing he starts doing is some line from
Barney Miller,
Parliament, or Shaka Khan tune, you know where his background is.
Shaka.
Yeah. When the guitar player starts playing Stairway to Heaven, you know what they're listening to. So your team, within your musical ensemble, you have a lot of different influences. And if the only influences that are being presented in your team musically are from a Chris Tomlin record or from your own personal tastes, then you're missing out on a huge, vast cornucopia of musical influences that should be presented on your stage, and you need to start exploring all of those things. Take these songs that are coming out of, you know, Chris Tomlin or whoever the writers are, and start to change them into something that fits your church, your team, your musical influences. They don't have to sound exactly like the record. Good music isn't limited to that.
All right. Awesome,
That
Tony.
stuff,
Thanks, man.
takes time, though. I mean, like when I go into a place, it's a bummer because I know each of these people represents a different, you know, point of view musically. Yet I'm going, okay, we've got 20 minutes to figure out these 3 songs. So do it like this, like this, like this. And
it's
I hate that.
It's a long-term thing I'm talking about. Like to start with that long-term.
Taking the time to really invest in those people and find out what kind of stuff they actually do.
Right.
I love that.
You want to build huge ownership on your team? Go to somebody on your team. Go to the bass player this week and say, "Listen, we're gonna pull out this old tune we haven't done a long time, but we all got tired of it years ago. I want you to go home and figure out a new arrangement, a new way for us to do this, and bring it to the next rehearsal." He's gonna be so excited to go and put his own stamp on something, bring it in, and I promise you, during rehearsal, you'll never see him more connected to what's going on than when you're working on his arrangement. So start doing those kind of things. Sorry,
well, guys, we're out of time, folks. What we need to do is continue this conversation, I think, for part 2, because you guys have some just incredible things to share. So how about we do that on the next podcast? Swift will be back. He'll be joining us again, so we miss Swift. Love to have him. We need to draw a picture like him, so make sure that you have a picture of Swift also with, you know.
That guy's so mean.
Anyway, but it's good, though. And on the next few episodes, we're also going to be talking about hire or not hire in the worship band. What's your decision on that? Also, back to the basics of worship. Are we heading for a crash? So, guys, thanks again for joining us. Stephanie Kelly, Tim Timmons.
I don't think you should be high during the worship band.
That's not what I said.
Is that what you mean?
Not what I said.
We'll talk about that next.
But we know what kind of worship band we're in. But anyway, guys, you guys are fabulous. Tony, thank you so much. Tim and Stephanie, glad to have y'all. And be sure to check us back on worshipteamtraining.com. Also, find us on Facebook, Worship Team Training, and Twitter. Great to have you guys again, and we'll see you back on July 16th on our next episode. So be sure to tune in, and we'll see you all next time. God's blessings to you.
Ciao.